The CDC has released school reopening guidelines. For starters, dweebs should only be shoved into well-ventilated lockers.
Kellyanne Conway's daughter Claudia auditioned for American Idol and advanced to the next round. Some say Claudia was off-key, but Kellyanne says she was just singing alternative notes.
Lindsey Graham says Trump is looking forward to the 2022 midterms. He was told that that's when they're bringing back the McRib.
Jaguar announced that all new vehicles will be electric by 2025. Men who drive Jaguars will now be known for their tiny carbon footprints. Following Richard Burr's vote to impeach Trump, there's speculation that Laura Trump will run for his North Carolina Senate seat. She currently has mild support from Republicans, but that's sure to improve after she tweets a couple racial slurs. 62% of Americans think we need a third political party. No thanks, said anyone who's ever met a libertarian.
And finally, snowstorms and freezing temperatures are causing power outages in large parts of the United States. But your Uncle Murray still wants you to know that underneath all those scarves, he's not wearing a damn face mask. Welcome to Biden time. Thanks to all of you for Biden time with each and every one of us. As always, I'm Christian Bladt with fellow mirth maker Tamra Brown. We appreciate you bringing the funny. And Scott Moore, what is behind you?
I have no idea. This is what they call art at a hotel room.
I guess at a fine chain hotel. I was at a DoubleTree over the weekend, and I wish we had art like that. It's very, very weird staying in a hotel these days, but they want to make sure you understand. Like, no, really, we clean it. I know we didn't used to clean rooms, but we do now.
Right.
You know. Anyway, so much to talk about as always, and we appreciate everybody who sticks with us with sort of a erratic schedule that we have. We'll get it nailed down fairly soon, but I did want to talk about impeachment too. As with most sequels, it's probably a little bit more disappointing than the first one. I guess the difference is that we did get some Republicans that voted to convict, and immediately they're working on censures their parties. Specifically, Pat Toomey, the Pennsylvania GOP, is saying, "Hey, we didn't send you to Washington to vote your conscience." So I wanted to kind of get your overall thoughts. I'll ask you first, Scott, what you thought as it played out. Did you ever have a minute that you thought that, oh yeah, they might be able to find 17 Republicans with conscience and or backbone?
Yeah, no, it basically played out exactly how we expected it to, because the whole thing with impeachment and conviction is such a tough hurdle to climb, which is why it's never happened before. And the framers did that on purpose. They wanted to make sure it was a super majority of 2/3 of the Senate. So you aren't going to have these close things where anytime, because of that case, any political party that has power could turn around and impeach a president every single time. So it is a tough hurdle. I did not expect it. I was still hopeful that they might wanted to come back and do at least the 14th Amendment and say, hey, we're going to bar him from running for future office. Because to me, that would only take a simple majority, and that would also help purge that part from the party so that the Republican Party can move on. So trying to convict him, I knew was never going to happen, although I was quite impressed that they were really only 10 votes short. And the number, like you said, we had quite a few Republicans, and it was a pretty decent majority, 57 to 43. I think the only other thing that surprised me was that every senator was there, because I wasn't sure if every senator was going to be there as well, so they could abstain from voting. So I was surprised you had all 100 senators there, and they all did vote. But like we talked about the other week on the show here, we knew that they were going to try to do this. They were going to hopefully have it done quickly. And mostly it was done for the optics. The Democrats and the impeachment managers were doing this for the optics for the American people, because everyone agreed, even Mitch McConnell, who tried to have it both ways, agreed that what happened was wrong. And so now the American people will see that, and this will now be in for the voters in 22 and 24 with all these senators that voted to not convict him. This will now be playing for those voters in those. I mean, for those voters in those elections. So yes, it's really what they need to do. They did, for sure.
There was a minute there where they thought that they might call some witnesses, Tamra, and I think no matter what happens in Washington, there is nothing that can get in the way from the Senate taking a scheduled break. They had a vacation coming; they were going to be done, and that was even a tactic that Lindsey Graham says, like, if you call witnesses, we're going to call a lot of witnesses. This is going to go on for a long time. That's how I was once a jury foreman. And there was one guy who was a holdout.
Bragging.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad somebody's impressed. There's one guy who was a holdout, and he had been talking about how he had a vacation to go on. And I'm like, well, it's fine if you don't, if you, it was a drunk driving thing. It was really like open and close. And we're like, well, it's fine if you don't trust police and you think that that this kid didn't really blow the really high blood alcohol content that everybody says he did, because the argument was that he got into a car accident before the alcohol hit him. It's like, oh yeah, he drank a lot, but it didn't metabolize in his system until later. And look, it's probably worked for other people. And so we're like, all right, so do you want to come back on Monday and do this again? Hey, let's do a vote one more time before we tell the judge that, oh, look at this, it's unanimous. Great. So that's probably some kind of miscarriage of justice that I'm certainly proud to be a part of. But it reminded me of that, basically telling the Senate, like, look, we all know how this thing's going. Do you really want to call witnesses? Do you want to bust up your vacation? What did you think as you watched all of it?
Well, first of all, I find it infuriating that Mitch McConnell always has to make me hate him a little bit more. He's talking about Trump is morally responsible for the insurrection, and
it's like OJ. He was financially responsible for his ex-wife's murder. He it's like, we don't know if he's guilty, but he's financially responsible for it. So yeah, it's so I think that's what McConnell was saying. I
think I would have been happier if he had said Trump is financially responsible for the insurrection. That could actually maybe hold him to some sort of conviction. But after Mitch McConnell is done talking about morality, I'm waiting to hear Cardi B preach about abstinence. Just stay in your lane.
Yeah.
The senators that the Republicans that voted to convict, there were some surprising ones in there. But then afterwards, now we're saying how the Republicans are, you mentioned, they're going to censure them.
Sure.
And I didn't know what that meant. So I looked at it, and it's just such a funny, it just sounds like you can explain it to me better, so maybe I can have a better grasp on what it is. But to me, it just seems like it's just this, we're gonna humiliate you.
It's like they take your hand and they go like this.
Exactly. That's what they say. It's a little slap on the hand.
It's the old Catholic school. None takes a ruler like 5 times to your hand.
Yeah.
It was
but
like
just the theater of it is just so petty and hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we have this as a procedure. I'm going to stop what we're doing to embarrass you, and then we can move on. And
tell you that you were bad, and now we're gonna and then we're gonna move on, and then you can keep doing whatever you were doing.
By the way, as we were talking about Mitch McConnell and the comparison to OJ.
Sorry, real quick. It just makes me, it's so clearly the founding father. Like, it's so clearly men started our government when we have rules like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about when the founding fathers were making these rules, it was still perfectly acceptable for there to be a duel. And I hear tell that there's a whole musical about that. But in any case, when we were talking about Mitch McConnell and the comparison to OJ, it did dawn on me. Who wouldn't want to watch a sitcom that is both OJ and former President Trump under house arrest living together? It's like it's the new Odd Couple. I know they tried another new Odd Couple a few years ago. This one I think will stick. It'd be hard to not see what OJ and former President Trump could get themselves into. But in any case, look, I think all that they could do is just kind of make the case. And there's all this talk about like, somebody made the point that if it was a secret ballot, it would have been 90-10 to convict Trump. But the fact, look, I think you should have to own it. I don't think there should be secret ballots for things like this. I think you should have to stand by it, and that's kind of what happens. But I think that we knew that was coming, and the interesting thing is there's this fear of Donald Trump running again, and I don't know how many times I can say, in a way that I don't say it too bluntly. Do you think his health is going to hold up? That man's going to even stroll for president in 2024 or waddle for president in 2024? That he will not be around in the sense where he can run for president. Now, you're all worried about getting primaried in 2022. You know what you should be more worried about is the ads the Democrats are going to run for you in some of your safe seats of how you didn't vote for this. And like, look at all this. And then there's comments, you have you have people who the day of and the days after said one thing about what happened in the Capitol. And now it's like, yeah, it's not so bad. And then I don't know what Ron Johnson does for his district in Wisconsin, but it's clearly a lot. That's what I mean. He's a senator. Sorry. But what he does for his state is what I really mean. Yeah. Because they love him, and that's one of the strangest states, because you have guys like him, you have Scott Walker, who they tried to recall multiple times, and yet he hung in the governor's mansion there. And by the way, go ahead. I
was going to say there are a couple points there. Just backing up back to Mitch McConnell, which again drove me nuts like Tamra. He comes up with it was a procedural thing because now Trump was out of office, which he wanted to hold until he was out of office to begin with. And all I kept telling people that day on Saturday was like, well, what would he have pretzeled himself into if Trump was still in office on why he was not going to vote to acquit him? Convict him. So I cannot stand the trying to have it both ways. And it was like he was trying to appeal to the Trump supporters on one hand and to the classic Republicans on the other hand. And it just is not going to work. And like I said earlier, exactly that, Christian, is that now a lot of these people are going to be primaried, but they're also going to have, the Democrats that are going to be playing these videos ad nauseum. And it is going to affect a lot of these people. The problem that you have right now is even though the majority of people actually wanted Trump to be convicted, the majority of the population that votes, you still have Republicans that are diehard Trump fans and fanatics. And that is why the Republicans decided not to convict him, because as you said, they are too scared that they are going to lose or be primaried, that they cannot do it. And it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out over the next few months as it kind of goes further back in the rearview mirror when we get closer to 22 on how, these Republicans feel at that point once we get closer. But it's Republicans have done a great job on being able to run as a minority party and be able to have more power than a minority party should ever have, because their record over the past 2 decades on one hand is abysmal when you look at the presidential level. But on the other hand, with them being able to hold on to the Senate with having millions less votes across the country and being able to gerrymander and being able to get their court packing in, they have done so much to be able to keep this minority power in there that they don't feel that they're going to have much repercussions for for voting to not convict Trump. And I do agree with you, Christian. I don't think Trump's going to run, even if his health is the same. He's not going to want to run to know that he could lose again. So again, his ego is too big that he's not going to put himself out there to run again if he thinks at any chance he's going to lose, because that would look horrible. He's going to be the William Jennings Bryant of the 21st century, someone who ran 3 times and lost every time. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that I think that I think he's going to enjoy these next 4 years a lot more than he did the previous 4. Mm-hmm. And, he's still certainly going to have a role in terms of, people are going to want his influence. They're going to want his endorsements. I mean, honestly, the first time he danced to YMCA, I think everybody should have been like, oh, no, we can't have that happen at our event. The odds that he might dance like that. And a couple things in the chat. Sam Whitfield says we should bring duels back. You know what? I think let's try it. You know what? Maybe we could have sort of the equivalent of the purge. We have one day a year where you're allowed to solve problems with a duel. But of course, they have to be they have to be televised. Of course, our great friend Lynn says there won't be another Trump win. Many who hold their noses and voted for him will not do so again. Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate it. It's great to see you in there. I love that you have the smiling face there. Whereas Sam just has his like cool little logo there, you know. Yeah, I think that that's really what it is. It's like, look, you're diehard, hardcore Trump voters are so far in that they think that they'll probably vote for Don Jr. They might even vote for Eric, but let's not get crazy. What do you think, Tamara, in terms of sort of this idea that that Republicans are still afraid of what former President Trump could do to them in the next few years?
Well, I mean, it makes you, because there's so many people who, like, people speculate Lindsey Graham all the time. What does Trump have on him? Because it just makes no sense. His loyalty just doesn't make sense. The way he flipped on a dime between hating this man to kissing his ass every day, and so
he's gone back and forth a few times, and I don't know. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but Lindsey, if your secret's what we all think it is, we know. Okay, he's not the only one with that envelope. Okay, just putting it out there that it's not going to be that big a deal if that's what he has. But it's also, yeah, I mean, who knows? But whatever it is, you feel pretty confident it's got to be something, because after January 6th, he was like, yeah, enough's enough. And then like that weekend, he was flying off to go and see Trump. So yeah, that's your point. But sorry, back to what you're saying, Tamara.
Well, so, you always have to wonder, like, what do these people, what does he have on them, A, if anything, and B, how would he have anything on people where, their political opponents don't have whatever information he may or may not have. But I always wonder if, because the Republicans are the minority, because the majority of Americans vote Democrat, people like Josh Hawley, who people speculate like, oh, they're planning to run for president one day, or just higher political aspirations, and that's why they're trying to stand out and cater to Trump's base. But because the Republicans are the minority, I mean, wouldn't the smarter political strategy then be the more moderate Republican? Because when Mitt Romney or any of the ones that I'm not that familiar with, but they voted to convict, I mean, I'd consider voting for them. Should they, I would think that the smarter strategy would be to try to get Democrats to like you, so that you could potentially win an election that you ran for.
Well, I think that look, Mitt Romney had a fair amount of national appeal in 2012. I mean, many of the polls had him winning right up until Election Day. So I don't know. I think that in terms of people who were inclined to vote for him to begin with, I think a lot of your more moderate Republicans would probably much rather vote for Mitt Romney again than, as Lynn said, hold their nose and vote for really anyone in the Trump family.
But that was because Mitt Romney was running against Obama, somebody who was extremely well liked. But if you put Mitt Romney against Hillary Clinton, for example, Romney's winning. And look how many Democrats would vote for Romney. So.
Yeah, no, look, I think that's I think it's a good point, and I think that any of basically the 7 senators who voted against Trump are probably the ones that have helped their national profile more than, if I do the math right, is it 43? The 43 who sided with him. I mean, for Josh Hawley to think that he has any kind of national appeal or appeal outside of the state of Missouri, where he's already having trouble raising money,
and he's not from there. He's not from there, and he doesn't live there. So there's a lot of, I don't think he has the state of Missouri on his side. Yeah.
I think that, I think that those are the sort of people. I mean, the idea that that Ted Cruz can see himself as a viable national candidate. I mean, I think that these last couple years have gone so badly, and you guys have been on the show with me for a while. You know how I feel about Beto. I think Beto could actually win against him now. That's how bad Ted Cruz has been in the last few years. He's like, there was a great thing. I meant to do a screen grab of it. He quote tweeted an article from the Babylon Bee, which is a right-leaning sort of The Onion, fake news source. And his quote tweet was,
I gotta look that up. I'm sure
this
it's
is
hilarious.
No, you know what? Some of their headlines, I honestly don't read the articles. Their headlines are pretty funny sometimes, about half the time. But this one was pretty good, and it was something about Disney. And he was just like, "I wish this was parody." And then a reporter was kind enough to point out from the screen grab of the Babylon Bee that it is actually parody.
It is parody.
And his defense, Ted Cruz, was that he was pretending to be stupid. He's not actually stupid. So I was just like, yeah, I mean, that's just one of many examples,
It's just like when Trump, his Clorox statement, he says, "Oh, I was kidding." It's like they can always claim to have been joking.
Yeah. I'm not actually stupid. I'm just pretend stupid, And I had shared a tweet with Scott a few days ago. He was very up in arms about not Scott, but Ted Cruz was very up in arms about Disney firing Gina Carano from The Mandalorian, which is certainly something that a sitting senator should be tweeting about. And first of all, she's a terrible actress. I think that that's really what the issue is. I think that but the right has taken up the cause because she agrees with them about like, oh, they don't want to watch the show anymore, and that she was the best thing about the show. And I'm like, okay, she's like the 12th best thing about like an episode that she's in. But it was just interesting because, Ted Cruz will take this stand, and so I pointed out, just imagine if he cared as much about democracy as he pretends to care about a Star Wars show that everybody knows he never watched. He's really going after Disney. And, I've said this so many times, but he would defend Disney if they insulted his wife or claimed that his dad was involved in the Kennedy assassination, because that's what's on record. And he would talk about a guy who was just like, basically everybody who ran against Trump in 2015 and 2016, just like they're on record from saying what was wrong about him. And then they're all like, Ted Cruz was willing to defend President Trump if he had been on trial, if they had done the impeachment when he was still in office.
What's that parody site called? The Bumbling Bee?
The Babylon Bee.
Babylon Bee.
Okay.
Yeah. The Bumbling Bee sounds good. If that's not taken, it's going to be mine. I'm going to take the Bumbling Bee, and people will think it's the Babylon Bee. And I'll cut you in because
you're welcome.
Yeah. Scott, what do you think about basically your Ted Cruz's and your Josh Hawley? Not what do you think about them personally? What do you think about their sort of national profile over the next couple of years?
Well, I think they've gravely ruined their national profiles. They're doing the short-term gain, and I say that for the Republicans in general. They're taking the short-term myopic outlook on trying to retain these Trump supporters, which we've said again and again that base is continually going to shrink, and without Trump having the megaphone anymore of the presidency or the megaphone of social media, it's going to continue to shrink. And that was always the case going back to 2016. And we talked about this then, that he needed to expand his base a bit, and he refused to do that. And you cannot win on that alone by just targeting that base that's continuing to shrink. And sure enough, he still could not eke out a win. It was still very close when you think about individual states, but the point is that he never expanded. And so the Republicans are going after voters that are going to be smaller in size, instead of Tamra's point of saying, going back to their roots and being a viable counterparty, opposition party to the Democrats. But what I said earlier is they don't have to right now. They can continue to be the minority party, and they know they're going to have the rural votes forever at this point, and that they will continue to try to run up the score there and eke out wins where they can. But it is a losing strategy as we move further along. And so Ted Cruz is done for any national race, and so is Josh Hawley. And like you said too, Texas is shifting more blue. And the more blue it becomes, the less likelihood that Ted Cruz will even be able to win re-election at a statewide level. And you see even Greg Abbott, the Republican governor there, is very unpopular. So they're definitely trending in the opposite direction. And Josh Hawleys of the world and the Ted Cruzes of the world are hitching themselves to a losing strategy in the longer run, which is, not going to help them out in winning in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if Trump had gotten reelected and say the Senate was still made up the way it was, it's a completely different conversation. You're like, yeah, I don't think you would have even gotten the 7. You probably would have gotten like 3. If Trump were still president, it's like, no, we're not going to do that to ourselves. We have enough of a headache. We're talking about Texas a little bit, and Kevin Scott wanted to check in that it's 17 degrees in Austin, woke up to 6 degrees, still 6 inches of snow and lots of ice, more coming tonight and tomorrow. And I mentioned that because, there's a lot of parts of the country where if there were 6 inches of snow, we wouldn't really talk that much about it. But it is interesting when it happens to somewhere like Texas that, I've often thought, like, what if there was
that's how this global warming BS ain't real.
That's cold. Right. Well, I think we're living in the first few minutes of the day after tomorrow, the Roland Emmerich film. But also, I've often thought, living in Southern California, that what if there ever was like the absolute freak weather pattern where it did snow, and the way that all the streets are laid out, and that's what they're running into in Texas, is like the pipes aren't made to handle this kind of cold. They don't have plows and the salt trucks and all of that. I was reading a friend of mine post about that. So, and I guess the weird part of this, and the reason I bring it up here, is that I guess because of the politics of Texas, there's a lot of people who feel like it's fun to make fun of them. I mean, you can make fun of them in the way that, if I posted a picture, a few steps down in front of the pool, and I sent it to people because, of everybody who left California for Texas, well, I could do that. But I don't know, we shouldn't feel glad about people who are having, weather that they're not accustomed to. It's I guess it's a little bit about like, oh, how does it feel? But
I can feel a little okay with it for people who don't believe in climate change. Then I'm like,
well, sure, but that's not going to change the way that their house was built. But I understand that you can feel that way, but I think that's it's like when they have like if they have if they have an earthquake on the East Coast, usually we're like, okay, 2.4, I'd sleep through that here, but I don't know. It's and Scott, the part of the country you're in was cold and rainy too. But this is the time of year. It's mid-February. I think that you can expect it in some places. But what do you think this says about us? That is Schadenfreude the new national pastime? Do we really enjoy other people suffering that much? That we can laugh when we see that Texas can't plow their roads right now. Scott.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's what social media has turned us into. And
it's true.
We've talked about this in the past, where it's very easy to sit in the comfort of your couch or your bed or whatever in your comfort and anonymously post things that you would never say to someone's face. So it's very easy when you're not the one suffering to just be like, oh yeah, look at all that. Those losers can't handle a little bit of cold. And you're right. I mean, at some point an earthquake's going to happen and other natural disasters are going to happen. And it has snowed in LA before, and it's very possible you get the right weather conditions again and you have a freak snowstorm in LA or a hurricane or things that are very out of the usual. And as Tamara's point is, with this climate change and things happening like this is going to continue to happen in unusual places. But yeah, absolutely. It's very easy to sit in the comfort of your home and make fun of other people when you're actually not out there suffering yourself or having to, again, say it to somebody's face, which would be very different from most people.
Oh yeah. No, if we had to hand deliver tweets to people's front doors, I don't think that there would be anywhere near as much traffic. Uvala Scrimshaw points out, great Avatar of Galactus, by the way. Before I moved to Minnesota, I used to wonder how a flowing river could freeze. As somebody who never lived in Minnesota, I went to college on the Hudson River, like right I could see it out my dorm window. I didn't realize that rivers could freeze, actually. So I'm learning things right here. I guess because in New York State, it didn't actually get that cold. I don't know. I mean, Tamara, I think that for the most part, what Scott said is true. I mean, it's like, oh, let's kind of laugh at other people's problems, but please feel bad for us when we have problems. Like, you know, we can laugh at another state, but let's ask people to feel bad for us that our state ran out of vaccines for the next 2 weeks, or, you know, I'm just picking something out of the air. Do you feel like that's pretty much where we're at? Like, let's laugh at everybody else, but they better feel bad for me when it's my turn.
Well, I haven't actually seen, I mean, what you've seen, if people are making fun of Texas, I really haven't seen that. So I guess, you know,
I think you're more
I'm not saying
discerning,
it-
and yeah,
not
you're
saying
more
it's not
discerning in who
true.
you're more discerning in who you follow.
Yeah.
Is what that
I
tells
mean,
me.
there's so many. I'm always reluctant to blame social media for bad behavior because of the fact that people have always been terrible throughout history. We just have a clearer window
Right. You
to
have a
them.
platform now.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't have the platform. So
Yeah.
people could sit there and make fun of people like they always
sure.
have, but nobody could hear it.
For sure. And then there's two, I mean, these are conversations that have existed as long as the internet has, but like for me on TikTok, whenever I get like an awful comment that I'm about to be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then I click on the profile and it's a 9-year-old with 2 followers. And I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna, this person has a lot to learn. So I'm not even gonna bother,
What if it was a 9-year-old with 50,000 followers?
Then that would warrant a response, because you can't it's
because
like you can't, when I would say just ignore Trump's tweets, and it's like, well, you can't just let something like that go when there's that much of an audience, people anyway. So getting back to, can we feel bad when somebody is suffering? I think for the most part there will always be people who don't have a gauge for propriety, but I do believe that for the most part people know to only punch up, don't punch down, and
Sure.
and I think because states like Texas are so easy to punch because of the fact that they have such a pride, so you feel like you're punching up. Like Texas pride, I would wager that Texas has when it comes to like state pride, I'd say Texas might have that more than any other state in the country. You never hear,
Yeah, nobody's like, don't mess with Arkansas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I'm not saying I've been to Arkansas. It's lovely there.
Yeah.
That's not the point I'm making.
So I think that's one of the reasons anybody would justify that making fun of Texas, even at a bad point in time, is still punching up. But as I said, I haven't seen anything specific, so I can't say like this was really in bad taste. But yeah, I mean, sure, people are genuinely suffering. It's not, you don't ever write a joke about a car accident. You don't ever write a joke about, a tsunami that killed thousands of people. Not because you can't, but because it's don't do it I'm not saying don't do it because you'll be canceled by doing that. I'm saying don't do it because people don't think that's funny when the tragedy outweighs the comedy. Your audience isn't going to laugh, even if they think you're hilarious. So
you can write the joke about the car accident if you're Tracy Morgan and you were in it and you got millions of dollars from Walmart. And you can write a joke about the tsunami if you're Gilbert Gottfried and you want to lose all the money you were getting from Affleck. But in general, yes, you're absolutely right. Uva Scrimshaw also chiming in. Fewer people could say it, but through radio and TV, lots of people could hear say snarky, mean, ill-tempered comments. Now being shitty is more democratic. It's true. We all get that. It's, if you think about even 20 years ago, or like a generation ago, you only had a handful of people like who got to be snarky and mean-spirited about things. But now we all get a chance to have our own little show that we run for however many followers we have when we send out a tweet or we do this show.
And by the way, just because I said the word canceled, it just reminded me, going back to the trial real quick, I cannot believe how many, you could have played a drinking game to how many times any of the Republicans said the word canceled. I don't think they fully understand what canceling somebody is. I think you disagree with something that they said, and they're, oh, you're canceling me. Like, they don't understand that. Who taught the Republicans canceled and the words cancel
culture? Yeah,
I mean, sure love it.
There's the flip side of cancel culture, which is being held responsible for bad behavior. And I think that there are exceptions to that, because you have, somebody gets a new job and somebody else takes the time to go through years of old tweets, or they've like had a grudge against somebody and like, oh yeah, well, they said this in 2008. So, and it's like, yeah, well, it's still true. People still say things, but I guess I don't know what the fix is, but I guess it's try to be less shitty. But you know what? If somebody's really out to get you, they'll probably find something that you've said or done that is cancelable. We were speaking about Texas, and I did want to take a couple minutes to talk locally about here in California. And that it seems like we now have, not we, but the state has enough signatures on the ballot for to recall Gavin Newsom. Now it's a recall election. It doesn't mean that he could possibly still win. He could still keep his seat. And that was like when I first moved here, was when the Schwarzenegger election was happening. I'm like, this is crazy. You could legitimately have voted for, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't the craziest name on that ballot. You could have voted for Gary Coleman. You could have voted for Larry Flint. And now, unfortunately, they're both rest in power. Gary Coleman and Larry Flint.
Gary Coleman died? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, quite some time. Yeah, a while ago. Larry Flint just died.
Yeah.
But a while ago.
Maybe I did know that.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I think that for the most part, the dissatisfaction is with the handling of, of COVID in general. But when it comes to lockdowns and easing things open, and I think that there's dissatisfaction statewide. I think at one point early in the pandemic, everybody was like, oh yeah, this guy's doing a good job. He really did things that, they took it seriously. And you're seeing a similar thing in New York, where everybody was raving about Andrew Cuomo. And now there's this scandal that is not being reported on that much, about the misrepresentation of how COVID spread in retirement communities and nursing homes.
Not being reported on. I guess somebody doesn't watch Fox News.
Well, the fact that they don't, that the fact that they're talking about it, yes, but I don't think that. I think that the what I was reading is that Rachel Maddow hasn't mentioned it. And go figure that Chris Cuomo hasn't mentioned the scandal dealing with his brother, which is kind of the point where it's like, yeah, you know what, we're going to have you have a co-anchor with you so that somebody can kind of pop in and talk about the news. You don't have to comment and say that your brother's a bad guy. But and I think that as this has gone on, I think people are like, I don't know how it could have been handled better in terms of Gavin Newsom. But I don't know, Scott. I mean, I think that people just aren't happy. And I think that that they see, like, Florida, your home state, they just kind of opened up everything in the summer, and they just were like, yeah, it's like basically like, let the kids run with scissors. We'll give them the plastic scissors. They won't cut themselves that much. But I guess that when you look at the numbers overall, people compare California to Florida, and they're like, well, why can't we do anything? And I think that's why all of a sudden there was that about face earlier this year, where it's like, oh no, you guys want to eat outside? Yeah, you can do outside. But it was like leading up to Christmas, there was this like very strict, and I mean, it seemed like everything was going to stay closed for a while. What do you think this says about California and about Gavin Newsom? How much of it has to do with, by the way, you guys should never go anywhere out to eat. Oh, but yeah, I did eat with some lobbyists at the most expensive restaurant in the country. And don't worry, we were eating outdoors. No, you were inside. How much does the hypocrisy enter into this when it comes to Newsom, and just your overall thoughts on why people are so unhappy with him?
Well, I think just take it back a couple steps. When you're comparing to other states and other situations, it is different this time. First, Andrew Cuomo was already in his third term as governor in New York State, so he's there, and he would probably win again if he ran for a fourth term. So, and Wisconsin.
By the way, UV the Strip Shot wants to know, will Andrew Cuomo win another Emmy? Because if you remember, he got that honorary Emmy. I wanted to throw that in there. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, it is funny. Wisconsin was a unique situation. When they did the recall effort, they did it less than a year after he was in office, and they ran the same Democratic candidate against him, which was already a very close race. And a lot of people are like, we may not be happy with Scott Walker, but are we going to really replace him with the guy that we just didn't vote in a year ago? The danger with this situation with California for the voters is that this was led by, again, a shrinking base of Republican voters. And there are millions of Republican voters. The threshold was only 1.5 million signatures when you had 5 million or whatever it was that voted for Donald Trump last time around. So it's very easy to obtain those signatures. But what's different between now and 2003 is that you had a Democratic governor that barely won re-election. You still had Republicans that had a pretty decent, sizable impact in the state. You still had statewide races being run and winning in 2003. But no Republican has won statewide election in California since 2006. You also had a bona fide rock star in Arnold Schwarzenegger, a huge celebrity that was coming in, and of course that overtook anything that anyone else. You got a lot of first-time voters like Donald Trump, a lot of first-time voters in California that went out that had no party affiliation that voted for Arnold Schwarzenegger because he was a movie star. You don't have that this time around, and you have a Democratic majority that is so much more entrenched. And what we're doing is basically wasting our time. We're spending $100 million for a potential election a year at the most before the election would happen in 22. So it's a very different situation. Yes, I think the hypocrisy played a role in it. Yes, I think the fatigue of the lockdowns definitely played a role in it. But by the time we're voting on the recall election, the vaccine should be more widespread. We should be returning to some semblance of normality. And with a Democratic majority here, I think it's just going to be an exercise in failure. And he would likely keep his job and again, then be running again less than a year later for re-election. So it's not really the smartest move, but these are things that are allowed in certain states like Wisconsin here, where you can recall officials. So it's part of the state constitution.
Yes, Tamra.
Me personally, I know the dissatisfaction with Gavin Newsom is COVID, mainly centered around that. I feel that, this was such an unprecedented event that governors really didn't know how to proceed. And in retrospect, it's easy to say you should have done this and you should have done that. But when people are telling you to, close everything, open everything, close everything, you're trying to figure out what's best without any sort of anything to lead you as to what the right thing to do is. The reason I think Gavin Newsom needs to be out is because the hypocrisy in when it comes to anything environmental. He'll say all day long, the environment, we listen to the science, the environment, and then I'm going to approve more contracts for offshore drilling. And we just had a giant oil spill in San Francisco, off the coast of San Francisco. So it's for reasons like that I think Gavin needs to go. He's not a progressive leader for the most progressive state in the country. But
the difference is we have an election in 22 that we could, as voters, go and do that at the time. So recalling him a year before is not really going to.
I'm sorry. I wasn't. I'm not saying to recall him. I'm just saying.
You're just saying.
I do agree that
he is somebody that can be replaced.
I wanted to point out his other fault, his bigger fault.
Well, come on, this is someone who at one point in his life thought it was a good idea to marry Kimberly Guilfoyle. So obviously he is not a great decision maker. But also to Scott's point, by the time a recall election rolls around, I don't know. I mean, sure, things can change, but it's easy to feel pretty confident that schools will be open, not this year, but August when the new school year starts. And if you don't have that every day where like your kids are still home, I think you're going to look at the world a little bit differently. And look, I mean, even states like New York that had the problems that they did, I mean, later this week, I think next week, they're going to have, I think, 10% capacity at a Brooklyn Nets basketball game indoors. So I feel like, that tells me that California will have some semblance of normalcy once it warms up. I mean, even in Florida, I read that they're keeping the Miami Marlins attendance to under 10,000, which they didn't draw 10,000 anyway. So this is it's kind of just like a normal Tuesday for the Miami Marlins, but they'll just be spaced out. But I don't know. I think that the more normal that things get, and that's probably why he's like, yeah, there's the argument as to whether or not you needed to close outdoor dining to begin with. I think the idea of however much normalcy, and I, by the way, I don't know one way or the other. I get my food to go mostly because I don't want to sit in public with my children. I would just rather not subject people to that. But in any case, I think that by the time, to Scott's point, by the time you would actually be voting, I think that people will be at least happy enough. I think if the day that they said that all the restaurants were going to have to close in the beginning of December, if you'd been able to vote for something that day, that might have been something. I want to bring this comment from All in the Game that I'm not quite sure I know for sure. Republican won't win statewide in California, but even in a blue state, Trump got 11 million votes in California in 2020, 200,000 more than 11 red states combined. I didn't see what 11 million. I mean, that's
but the population of California. I think it's because of that. I mean, the population of California is larger than.
Yeah, I mean, sure, yeah, but I mean, I think that to his point that they won't win statewide, but that's why you're seeing sort of some of the regional elections and House seats flipping to red because there are Republicans.
Go ahead. Just to clarify, it was actually 5.5 million. 11 million was for Biden. But it was still the most that a Republican has gotten in the state of California. And again, yes, that's because of population.
Sorry, it was more than Reagan?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just because population.
There's more people now.
And that's the thing. It's more people, and that's why the numbers go up. And that's, again, why he had the most voters of any Republican presidential candidate nationwide. The population is bigger. So yes, he did have the most, and that is correct, but it was about 5.5 million to Biden's 11 million.
I think if you percentage wise, what is the percentage of California Republicans versus percentages of Republicans in other countries? It would probably be one of the smallest.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think that the percentage wise, but that number, obviously that's enough votes that can certainly change some elections here, but then also, you can send people to Washington, and look, anybody, my in-laws live in Orange County. Anytime that you go down to Orange County, there's a reason why people refer to it as the Florida of Southern California. And, I was trading messages with a friend in New York about when baseball stadiums might open, and I realized, of course, like one of the first ones is going to open as soon as the kid is Anaheim, because it's in Anaheim. As soon as Disneyland can open, and things like that. And look, that little bit of semblance of normalcy, it's like, oh, you can go to a Dodger game, but there's only going to be 17,000 people out of 55. That's fine. I think people will be like, yeah, that's normal enough. And once people get their vaccines and things like that, I do think that people might have been worked up towards the end of last year, when they were saying, like, don't see your family for Thanksgiving, don't see your family for Christmas. And then everybody did it anyway, but they were being told those things. And I guess that that's the difference. Eula Scrimshaw chiming in that, no states have anything like a parliamentary vote of confidence. A recall is the best they can do. But I think the process does take a while, and it would be very expensive, obviously. So in terms of those issues facing us, I think that you're right, Scott, that Newsom will probably hang on for a while there. But Tamra, to your point as well, there's a lot of reasons that people haven't liked him for a while, even before 2020. I think that there were a lot of issues with him, but I guess it'll see. But if he runs for re-election and he's the Democratic candidate, I can't imagine him not winning. You know, I even with 11 million Republicans who would vote, or 11 million Trump voters. You know, I don't know who else they would vote for. I think that the Schwarzenegger thing, like we were saying, is a bit of a fluke because people thought it was funny to go vote for the Terminator. And I was still registered in New York, so I didn't get to decide whether or not I thought it was funny. Honestly, I definitely would have voted for Gary Coleman.
I mean,
I feel pretty strongly about that.
I don't know if Alex Padilla would have been in the running, but that could have been one of, I think we're all happy that he's a senator now. But he could have been a challenge too. People like Padilla. He could have been a challenger.
Yeah, no, that's true. So, and we're starting to just to sort of wrap up to the topic that we started with. We're starting to see lawsuits against President Trump and former President Trump and Rudy Giuliani over the Capitol riot. That's something that that broke a little bit earlier this morning. I think that I guess he's going to stay in the news for a while. But in any case, I think that it's been surprisingly quiet. I read that memo to SAG-AFTRA last week. I'm surprised there haven't been like 10 of those sorts of things every day. And did I miss the post acquittal parade at Mar-a-Lago? Because I just expected something. I expected an "I told you so." I expected a call into Fox and Friends. I mean, Steve Bannon's podcast, and that's what makes me think that he's really going to enjoy not being president anymore. I don't know. So, and I don't know, Scott. I didn't miss something, right? He didn't take out a full page ad in the Washington Times that I missed.
No, not that we know of. So we'll see how if he does do something like that.
Well, I guess we'll keep an eye out for it, and obviously we'll let everybody know when you can find us again next week. As I said at the top, we appreciate everybody sticking with our somewhat erratic schedule, but we will be back, and who knows what we'll talk about. You know who we didn't talk about the whole show?
Biden.
Yeah, President Biden.
No news is good news.
Yeah,
he handled the impeachment the way he should. It's like, yeah, let the Senate take care of that. It's and look, hearing that the administration bought millions more vaccines, and that I guess the FDA is closer to approving this Johnson & Johnson single shot. That's the kind of news that he wants to be attached to. But we'll get to talk about him sometime in the near future, I'm sure. But until our next episode, Tamra, where do people find you?
Find me on TikTok at Hey Tamra.
And Scott, has there been much interaction with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, or have you just been too busy working?
I've been too busy working, but you can always find me right there at the bottom of your screen at sman80 on Twitter. And yes, I will try to keep up with that and keep our feud going.
Yeah, and then all I did was I tweeted at Ted Cruz, so I felt like I learned from the master. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And if you're enjoying the show, please subscribe to the Blackcast YouTube channel. You'll find you'll get the alert when this show is going to be going live. Usually I post it I let everybody know at least a day in advance. And you can follow the show on Twitter at BidenTimeTV. So please subscribe, please follow, and please tune in next time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.